Welcome to the Great Loop Radio Podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today we are going to talk about the St. Johns River side trip. Tim and Diane Vandersall, who have been with us before, will be our guests, and they'll tell us why the St. Johns side trip is a winner. So, we will be with them in just a second. First, as always, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Great Loop Yacht Sales, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners and viewers to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And down to the topic at hand, the St. Johns River side trip. Tim and Diane, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here. So you are, of course, Gold Loopers. You've been speaking at some of our recent events, which we greatly appreciate, and you're coming to us from your new land-based home, but we're excited to see you at the Spring Rendezvous coming up. Hopefully you'll be there by boat, but whatever works for you. First of all, let's start with kind of the high-level overview of the St. Johns River. For those who are not familiar with it, give us the 10,000-foot view about, how do you get to it from the Great Loop route? How many miles do you navigate? What's the general character of the St. Johns? Those sort of things.
Okay. Well, the St. Johns River is, for those that don't know, it's the longest river in Florida. It's 310 miles long, and it begins as a marsh just below Cape Canaveral, and it works its way all the way to the Atlantic near Jacksonville. So, and the St. Johns River is pretty unique, and it's one of 3 rivers that flows north, which is pretty cool. And it has a 30-foot drop. It flows very slowly. And Jim's going to tell you more about.
Yeah, it's about, like Diane said, it's like 310 miles long, and the navigable portion of that is about half of that. So coincidentally, we went up the river and back to almost our starting point, and we traveled 310 miles. So it's like I say, about halfway. You can navigate half of it and then come back, and it's the total round trip's about 310 miles. The river itself, I think we'll talk a little bit more as we go into it, but it starts out very wide next to the Atlantic Ocean, and as you get into Jacksonville, it's still very wide, like 3 miles wide, and very city-like. You're going to go through Jacksonville and some industry, and as you creep towards Sanford, the end point, it just gets more narrow and more wild and more exciting.
Yeah. So there's lots of side trips on the Great Loop, and if you do them all, it can take quite a long time, which is fine if you've got the time. But what was it about the St. Johns River side trip that made you decide that was definitely one you were going to take on?
Yeah, so as you come around, we came down the 10 Tom on our loop and went around Florida, and you're on the intercoastal for a majority of that. So as we came around towards this area, we read about the St. John's side trip, and we love side trips because it's just something out of the ordinary that not all loopers get to do. And so we read about it and said, this looks like something that's right up our alley. And the wildness of it and getting into the internal parts of Florida is something not every looper gets to do. And that's what turned us on to it. And even though we were behind the pack, if you will, of the rest of the loopers in 2023, we said, let's get further behind the pack. Go ahead and do this trip down to St. John's.
Yeah. And I know you loved the St. John's. What did you love about it, and anything, you wish you had done differently on that side trip as you went along?
We loved everything about it. We had a great trip. We loved the wildness of it, and we liked the nature. Just there was everything. We saw the gators and the birds and all kinds of beautiful things, but it did feel like you were on the Amazon sometimes. It felt
Wow.
so remote, and the sounds, I guess, like Jurassic Park for sure. Like the sound from velociraptors. It was
Yeah.
crazy. It was really exciting.
Well,
And I think as you're going around Florida, you see a lot of towns and cities and houses along the intercoastal, right? And you do see some wildlife, of course, dolphins and things like that. But on the St. John's, you basically turn that corner and all of a sudden you trade the dolphins for alligators and you get back into the jungle. And we just love we love nature like that. So it's
Yeah.
right up our alley.
So, for someone who might be planning on doing this side trip or considering it, how many days did it take you to go up and back? How much extra time on the loop do you need to allow for to be able to do this one?
Yeah, we took our time. We went from May 1st to May 13th. So 12 days. And there was two stops that we stayed a couple nights. So you could, if you had a faster, we go about 8 miles an hour. So if you had a faster boat, I mean, you could get to Sanford in a day from Jacksonville if you had a fast boat, but really that's not what the loop's about. So we took our time. We stayed a couple nights in different places and got to just take our time and really see it. So 12 days, but or less, I would say, or more. If you really love it,
Yeah.
you could spend longer down there.
Yeah. And do you know how many of the 12 days you spent were actual travel days and how many were just days you were just relaxing and enjoying where you were?
Yeah, I think we just spent 3 days in Sanford and 2 days in Jacksonville. So there's what 5 days there, so probably 7 travel days.
Okay. So, the first day you kind of ventured off the ICW near Jacksonville, went through Jacksonville to Green Cove Springs. Tell us about that leg. What was, obviously Jacksonville's a big city, so it's probably very different than when you get further into the river, but tell us about that day.
Yeah, so we started out in Palm Cove Marina, which is on the intercoastal and south of the St. Johns River, just by 5 miles or so. And you come up the intercoastal, and all of a sudden you hit the St. John's, and it's way different than the intercoastal. It's very wide, and you make that left-hand turn and start to do a U-turn going upriver or south, and you go through Jacksonville, which is a big city. It's actually the most populated city in Florida, which we learned later. So you go by the river and you'll see a bunch of industry, Maxwell House Coffee Factory is there. There's a lot of big skyscrapers and bridges and things to do and see. Uh, and it's about 3 miles wide in that area. And as we
Oh,
kept cruising that day, it slowly got a little bit narrower and skyscrapers disappear and industry disappears and you start seeing more trees and things like that. And as you got closer to Green Cove Springs, um, it's just a little bit more barren. And you make a right-hand turn to come into Green Cove Springs. Looks very remote. Um, and the whole trip is just that day was just beautiful, and you can see how things are changing as you're going along. We had great weather on the whole trip, so really from a navigation standpoint, that first day was just, and all the days really are just easy. You just follow your markers, follow your charts, and no real concerns of grinding out or anything like that. So relatively easy cruise to Green Cove Springs.
A lot of loopers know the have heard of the city Green Cove Springs or the town maybe is a better word for it, because that's where a very popular mail service is. So if we look in our a Great Loop database of members, we have hundreds of members literally whose address shows as Green Cove Springs that use that. Um, but I think a lot of people who haven't done the St. Johns River side trip don't realize that Green Cove Springs is actually a place you can navigate to because it's not on the ICW. So when you arrived there, what's available there in terms of dockage or things to do in Green Cove Springs?
they have a city dock there in Green Cove Springs and it's $20 a night and they had electric and I believe water, but I know it got damaged by the hurricane, but they did open the docks back up. I'm not sure if they got the electric restored, but it was really nice. We were able to dock right there. There's a beautiful park right there. City Hall's there. There's a pool there. Lots of restaurants, theater, great little town. We biked a lot. We even biked to St. Brendan's Isle
Mm-hmm.
to mail. One of our goals was to go get our mail in person. And so we did. So it was kind of fun to do that and pick up our mail and see how that service works. It's very, very good trip to do. Take the extra time. But And it's the county seat of Clay County too. So the government offices are there, and
Uh-huh.
it's a cute little town.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So from Green Cove Springs, I know the next day you went to Corky Bells, which is in East Palaca. I know nothing about that except it's a cute name. So, tell us about the navigation, and is that kind of the only viable next stop, or why did you pick Corky Bells?
No, there's plenty of marinas in between Jacksonville and Corky Bells that you can stop at. And that's one of the things that when you're doing a loop, why you should do more than one loop, because you can only see so many things when we're cruising through the first time. So
Yeah.
we just picked Corky Bells because we had read. I'm a big reader on the reviews on Navionics or Argo or Waterway Guide, whatever you choose to use. So we read the reviews, and the Corky Bells had great reviews, and we just picked it. Well, I like free also. I should say that. Um, it is a good attribute. So we didn't know before we got there, of course, whether there'd be enough room. It said there was room for like 4 boats, and sure enough, we got there, and we were the only ones there all night, and had the dock and to ourselves, and the restaurant was fantastic. It's a great stop.
Great
Yeah.
Southern cooking, and the townspeople came, people that were at the restaurant came down and talked to us, just curious about the loop and the boat.
And it was also only a just over 4 hour cruise from Green Cove Springs. That first day I didn't mention it was about 8 hours
Mhm.
from Palm Cove to Green Cove and Springs, and this one was only 4 hours, and the rest of the trip was shorter days for us, which is really nice because it's nice to get somewhere and have the rest of the day to explore.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the things that the St. Johns River is really known for is the wildlife. And you mentioned seeing the birds and the gators and things like that. Your next stop overnight, I know, was in Anchorage. So tell us about that spot. Um, and did you see more wildlife being at anchor overnight? And, the sounds Diane talked about. Tell us about the whole experience of cruising that day and what the Anchorage was like overnight.
That was one of our prettiest days down the St. John's. That we had good weather the whole time. We were very lucky. But leaving Green Cove Springs and everything, in Corky Bells, we had to cross over Lake George, and it's a pretty big lake. And it was like glass, so you could hardly even tell we were moving. It was so pretty, and we made that a 6.5 hour day. And we like to travel. That's about our happy sweet spot on traveling during the day. We like a 6 or 7 hour day, or shorter if possible. And so Morrison Island is where we ended up anchoring, and it's a cute little island right near Paramore's. It's like an RV camp place, and we travel with our dog Maggie. So we're always trying to find a place where we could take her to go to the bathroom and get off easily and safely.
Mhm.
So that checked all the boxes, and so we were able to get her off the boat ramp there in Paramore's and walk her around. We were able to get a shower there. They were very nice to us there, and we did dinghy all around Morrison Island, and there was the biggest gator. He had to be 10 or 15 feet. He was really large. We were dinging back to Wilma May, and it crossed right in front of us. And I'm pretty sure that gator is the same gator that our good friends anchored there, Jackie and Sally, and they saw the same gator. I'm almost positive. Big. Biggest one.
So that kind of leads me to a question. When you do have a dog that needs to get to shore from an anchorage, and you've got the added, worry of the fact that there are gators around, because that makes it a little bit more scary to bring your dog from an anchorage to a place where they can go to the bathroom. How did you locate a spot that had a boat ramp so that you knew that there would be a dock there or a way for you to land the dinghy and get to shore in a safe manner without being in, swamp and mud and things like that?
Yeah, and again, I'll go refer back to the reviews on Active Captain, Navionics, Argo, and Waterway Guide. If you read through those, it's not always apparent when you read just the information part, that gives the phone number and all that. But if you read some of the reviews, a lot of loopers are dog owners, so
Yeah.
they'll tell you, hey, there's a spot to bring your dog. And this one did. It had a boat ramp, had a little store with ice cream and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's cute.
So the reviews are a great resource on how to figure out what is at a certain stop. And it is important on this trip that you do go somewhere where you can take your dog, if you have a dog, to take her to shore without worrying about an alligator
Right.
attack.
Yeah.
So I would say just in general on this trip, as you get past, I would say Corky Bells, the river starts narrowing up and it starts looking like something out of the African Queen movie, and there's there are a lot of alligators. So you need to make sure that you read those reviews and find a spot to be able to get your dog off. And I would also word of caution, just, you can YouTube alligators and find a lot of scary stuff, but as long as you keep your dog inside your boat, inside your dinghy,
Yeah.
don't let him or her stand on the swim platform, things like that. Just common sense things. Keep them out of the reach of gators. You'll be fine.
Yeah, that's great advice. Let's take a quick break and play a message from a sponsor. When we come back, we'll talk about the next few stops along the way and more about the St. Johns River. So we'll be back in a moment. The Boat Galley will make your boat life better. They offer 8 online courses on topics related to living on a boat, such as how to store everything you'll need, living with a smaller fridge, taking a dog with you, and effective use of your VHF. Their quick reference cruising guides will simplify your life underway, giving quick answers to questions like, where's the next fuel stop? Or how high is that bridge? The Boat Galley Cookbook and its 800 boat-friendly recipes, including 75 Docktail appies and 40 drinks, will make cooking aboard a snap. Get 10% off purchases with code AGLCA.
Green Turtle Bay Marina and Resort has consistently been voted a must-stop by loopers. It has earned the coveted 5-anchor designation from Quimby's Cruising Guide. This full-service marina features over 450 slips. They are located at mile marker 31.5 on the scenic Cumberland River. Green Turtle Bay is a proud commander sponsor of AGLCA, so join them and find your waterway of life.
We're back on the Great Loop Radio podcast. My guests today are Tim and Diane Vandersall. They are Gold Loopers who are sharing the wonderful side trip they took on the St. Johns River. St. Johns is known as one of the more pristine kind of natural rivers left in Florida. And we've talked a little bit about the wildlife. I know it's also often a haven for manatee, but I think that's mostly in the winter, where the water is warmer there because of some of the natural springs. But did you encounter any manatee along the way?
We did in Sanford. When we were in
Mhm.
Sanford, we saw some manatee there. So it's right near the marina.
Yeah, fun.
One of our
So,
favorite stops was Blue Springs Park, which we'll talk about, but we did not see the manatees on our trip at this time of year, early May. But we had other people tell us that if you go in the wintertime, you'll see hundreds of them at
Yeah.
Blue Springs Park.
and I think Blue Springs Park was actually part of your next stop, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about that one.
Yeah, so the next day we only went 20 nautical miles, and it took us 4 hours. And the reason for that is you're on a narrow river. There's plenty of twists and turns that you have to just go slow on and be careful. And then, of course, you want to watch your wake. So there'll be some docks and houses along the way, and you don't want to damage any of those features. So
Mhm.
we made it down to Pontoon Island, which was, I think we're in agreement, our favorite
Favorite.
stop on the whole trip.
Mhm.
Pontoon Island, there's a couple anchorages there, but we pulled off on a side creek and anchored Wilmame, and we absolutely loved it. And then Diane could talk about what we did there, but it was beautiful.
We did
Yeah.
lots there, but there's a state park there that Tim mentioned that we took Maggie hiking on. There's trails. The park is closed, not to hikers, it's not closed, but to boaters it is. But you
Mhm.
could dig there. And but when we first got there, there was another main ship, a bigger main ship that was anchored further away from us, but still near the island. And the man came over in his dinghy and invited us over for docktails in the evening. So we went over later, and it was kind of a funny story. Tim, we're getting a tour of their boat, and Tim goes down to see the engine and different things, and they come up and Tim's just laughing and like, what's so funny? And he said they have a washing machine on their boat, and Tim said, "It's a nice washing machine. Do you like it?" And the owner said, "Yes, we love it. We use it all the time." And he said, "We got it for free from somebody from Alabama." And we just started laughing because that was our washer and dryer.
The loop is a small world, isn't it?
Very small world. So we found our washer and dryer. Funny.
We had taken it out at Goose Pond Marina because the main ships, they're great boats, but we tried to move everything we owned onto the boat. So we needed some extra space. So underneath the stairs was the washer and dryer.
Mhm.
We pulled that out, put it on Facebook Marketplace, and somebody took it right away. And then months later, we find it
We
on another
left them
boat.
on the loop.
Pretty funny.
Reunited with your washer and dryer.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, very funny. Um, so your final stop on the way up was Sanford, which is pretty much, I think, the end of navigation. So, and you're actually at that point by car, not very far from Orlando. But tell us about Sanford because I hear that it's an absolutely lovely town, and we've had some loopers who, decide to winter in Sanford for several months. So tell us about that, the trip to Sanford that day, and then the town itself.
Yeah, I think before the trip there, we should mention Blue Spring State Park.
Yeah.
So from where we anchored right next to Hontoon Island State Park, it was a 4 mile wonderful dinghy ride to Blue Spring State Park. And we did it both on the way down and then we stopped again on the way back. The first time to Blue Spring State Park, we took Maggie, our dog,
On our dinghy.
got to shore, walked around the park. It was beautiful. And then on the way back, we decided to not bring Maggie and take advantage of the springs. It was nice and warm that time of year in Florida. So we jumped on some inflatables and cruised down the springs. The water is crystal clear. The beautiful water is just coming out of the ground. And I would a piece of advice from that experience is to, if you're going to do this trip and you're going to go to Blue Spring State Park, which we highly recommend,
Or any of
bring
them. Yeah.
bring some fins and mask and snorkel and just be able to dive down where that water's coming out and see the fish life and everything. It was just simply amazing. Yeah.
And don't bring your dog because the dogs aren't allowed in the spring. So that's why the first time
Got
we
it.
could get in the water. So we really wanted to experience that. So the second
Yeah.
time we
It sounds really spectacular. I'm glad you kind of backed us up, Tim, and went back to the Blue Springs State Park. So
Yeah.
now go ahead to Sanford.
The last day upriver or going south was day 5. We went from Hontoon to Sanford, and that was only just over 3 hour journey.
short day.
And you're still going through a narrow river, and then it opens up into Lake Monroe. So the last half hour or so is traveling into Sanford. That Lake Monroe, like I said, the whole journey was relatively easy from a navigational standpoint. Lake Monroe is rather shallow, so just follow
State
your charts when you get into Lake Monroe, follow the markers, and then when you're getting close enough, holler to the marina either by phone or on the radio and let them know you're coming, and they'll walk you through the last final mile or so into the marina because it is shallow if you get outside the markers.
Okay.
And Sanford's such a cool town. It's the county seat of Seminole County, and they have the most beautiful bike path that goes on forever. It seems like all along the lake, and then they have old historic houses there and wonderful restaurants. It's a very colorful town. A lot of golf carts. People have golf carts and drive around there. So very welcoming town. We absolutely loved it. So I can see why people would want to stay in winter there. And we got lucky and got to stay at the downtown Sanford Marina, which was really had access to everything. So
It's a block or two from all the sites and restaurants and things like that. One of probably the best German restaurant, I think it's called Hollerbach's, is right
So
there
good.
close to the marina, and love the atmosphere there and the food as well.
Yeah. Sounds like a great stop and a great side trip. So kind of by nature, side trips connect to the Great Loop, but they're rivers that once you navigate in one direction, you do eventually have to turn around and come back. So of course that is true of the St. Johns River. Some side trips have good opportunities to pick completely different stops all the way as you're backtracking. Was that true for the St. Johns, or did you mostly stick to the same places as you came back downriver?
Yeah, so we basically did the same return trip because we enjoyed our stops. We stopped at Pontoon Island again, as we said before, because we really loved it. We stopped at Corky Bell's
Because
again.
we loved it.
I don't think I mentioned on the way down, Corky Bell's is really known for their food, so their Southern cooking. I don't think it's a good spot to lose weight, but other than that, the food is phenomenal and the drinks, and you're overlooking the river. It's just a great
Just
stop. So
fun.
we stopped there again, and then we did do a different thing. We did not stop at Green Cove Springs the on the way back. We stopped at Port 32 Marina on the west side of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
They are a Great Loop sponsor.
Yes.
And they also offer, I think it was 3 nights free for any first-time visitors
Oh,
that are
wow.
That are loopers. Yeah, that's what drew us to it.
Yeah, it was
That's
like I said,
amazing.
I like free, so
Yeah, we all do.
yeah. And otherwise, I don't know what their rate is, probably more than $3 a foot
Yeah,
or
it's a
so.
very
So
nice
Right.
marina.
you get 3 nights free. They had a wonderful pool, and by that time it was really warm out, and it's adjacent to a nice walkable town with restaurants and things like that. So we enjoyed our full 3 nights at Port
Yeah.
32 Marina in Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's great.
It's also very close to, coincidentally, the Loop restaurant. So we
Oh,
went up.
interesting. Okay.
And then we did where else? We stayed at Sisters Creek then too. They have a free dock there.
Hmm.
We stayed there and watched all the boat traffic go. I think it was a weekend, and we just, we try not to travel on the weekends if possible. And that was a fun stay at a free dock too.
Yeah, Sisters Creek, if you can picture a cross. So on the south side is Palm Cove Marina, and then the St. John's crosses it this way. So we
Mhm.
were coming up this way, and then you turn north again. And very close to the St. John's is Sister Creek uh, public dock. Not a whole lot there, but it is beautiful and serene and a lot of current. This is where we got our first taste of what we were going to see into Georgia and the Carolinas is current. So it was a good test for us because there was no one at the dock. We were able to pull in, and I
Yeah.
would say that was more risky for the dog than the alligators. It was the current. But I picture if Maggie would have fallen in,
Yeah.
getting off the dock or something, she might have ended up in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, it is something you have to think about when you're getting those pets and yourself off. If you end up somehow in the water, you're not staying in the same place for very long with that current. So good to know. We actually, the Sisters Creek dock had a sunken boat at it when we were on our way on our loop. I think they finally removed that though.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
did they? Was it a sailboat? I
It
wonder.
was, in fact, but this was before you would have been coming through. So if you didn't see it, it must be gone. Even so, that's good news.
yeah.
So yeah. Well, any last advice for somebody who maybe is considering this side trip? Anything else they should know about it?
Just do it.
Do it.
Yeah,
It,
Yeah.
it's a different experience of all of Florida, with exception of the Everglades, if you get to go back in some of those small creeks. But it's just the wild side of Florida, and that's what we loved out of the whole loop. People ask what was our favorite thing, and I think it's the wildlife for us.
the nature. Just
So even alligators, even though people may be a little scared of them, we just loved watching them and how they are the perfect predator, and
very stealth.
they're just really amazing creatures. So
Yeah.
just do it. We if you're into that kind of thing, it's a mixture of wildness and some pleasant stops along the way.
Yeah,
So
beauty and serene, peaceful too. It's very
Yeah,
peaceful.
which is very different than a lot of the ICW these days in Florida. So great to hear that this side trip is there and is available to the nature lovers and the wildlife lovers and the people who just want to do something that's a little bit different. So Tim and
Yeah.
Diane, thanks for sharing the details and thanks for joining me.
yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody who's watched or listened this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.